Welcome to the National Organization for Rare Disorders Special Roundtable. This roundtable is part of our Rapid Response Leadership Series. My name is Debbie Drell, and I'm NORD's Director of Membership and your facilitator for this meeting. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. The lines are currently muted, but they will be unmuted, and you can unmute your line when we're in the roundtable. We are creating a breakout room for all the different groups to be able to talk in a smaller setting. Please update your Zoom handle to show your first name and organization if possible. So I could put Debbie NORD. That's helpful for us if we want to know what organization you represent, but if it's not possible, if you could just rename it so that at least it has your name. If you're able to go on video when we move into the roundtable, that would be helpful so people can see your face and we can make meaningful connections. To encourage a safe space for transparent and open conversation, we will pause the recording when we move into the breakout rooms for the roundtable. However, we will be taking notes. Our staff moderators will be in the room taking notes, facilitating the dialogue, and then we will reconvene and share those, what we've learned. So this is NORD's membership team. We're working for you. NORD's mission is your mission. If anything comes up that has not been resolved, a question or an issue, just email us at membership@rarediseases.org. The agenda is there. We will do this welcome. We'll talk about guidelines for participating, and then we'll split off into the breakout rooms. We will come back in the last 10 minutes or so to do report backs, and you will get a message during the breakout for 5 minutes to wrap up and then 1 minute to close. If you have a question, you can use the Q&A button located at the bottom of the window, and you can ask a question at any time during the meeting, but we will address them as best as we're able to. We really want to focus on having these breakout sessions. NORD's mission is your mission. NORD, as you can see on the screen, we work with over 310 member organizations, and you're entitled to all the resources that NORD provides, including state-level advocacy, policy, communications, public awareness, education, patient assistance, and more. So our meeting has some specific objectives. One is we've seen 1,000 questions on virtual platforms. Everybody's got a different conference, a different fundraiser, a different need. So your question may or may not be answered specifically. However, what we will do in the beginning is share what we've learned transitioning to virtual platforms, or at least some of the resources. And then our second and third objectives in the roundtables is that you share your challenges and you share your successful strategies. That's what the goal is to tackle in the breakout rooms. So let's begin. We've been hearing a lot from members about virtual platforms. Why did NORD go in this direction? What does NORD use for networking? What are you doing about Summit? How have you used virtual platforms for fundraising? NORD is very specific. We are a type of organization that's an umbrella. The events that we're using these platforms for are multiple days. They bring hundreds of people. It may not be your specific circumstance, but we want to share what we've learned. So you can access our Facebook group to hear what other leaders are using. If you look up platforms or virtual, you will find a lot. We have a webinar on converting your in-person event to virtual. There's a discussion thread on going virtual. Media companies, these are specific threads within the Facebook group that has 400 leaders. They're really robust conversations. And our Rapid Response Leadership Series has an on-demand video that features Carrie Lucas, who's our Associate Director of Development and Events. And she's the mastermind behind a lot of our work in creating and finding these platforms. She recorded before she went on maternity leave, but she was getting a lot of questions. What is NORD using? So we just put it together and made this webinar, 30 minutes, with what NORD did and how we, what the thought process was behind in creating a request for proposals. If you're not aware, BoardSource has made available free of charge their best practices on virtual meetings. It's called Virtual Meetings Untangled, and you can Google it and it's on BoardSource. So next slide, please. If you're not familiar with NORD, you are familiar with NORD. If you're not familiar with Zoom, sorry. Zoom has all sorts of fun functionalities, and When you're in the breakout room, you will be grouped by size of your organization. And there's a NORD note taker. And what we're going to do for how to call on you, because we don't want the most aggressive person to be heard every time. We want everybody to take their turn. We're going to use the raise hand function. So you click on participants, and on participants, there is the functionality to raise hand. And I had to click on more. Well, I can't raise hand because I'm a host, but you can use the function to use the raise hand. If you want to practice it right now, we can see you raising your hand. But when our facilitator says raise hand and you do this, that unfortunately we won't call on you because it doesn't put you in the right order, and that's harder for us to do. So you have to use the raise hand function if you're able to. So that is just a little bit about that functionality, that the raise hand function will actually order you by the order in which you used the raise hand. So now we will break out for the next 40 minutes, and the recording will be paused during the breakouts. You should be broken out by the size of your organization, but we will start doing report outs, and closed captioning is made available now. Our closed captioner will start typing as soon as she gets the API set up, but you can click on closed caption and show subtitle. Oh, there she is. Yep. Okay. So if you're interested in the closed caption function, it's available there. Now we're going to report back, and it's 4:52. So we might go a little bit over the hour. If you miss any of the report back, it will be recorded. And so thank you for your patience as we navigated some challenges. So let's report back. We'll start with Amanda's room. Amanda, what did you learn? What did the group?
So I think everybody in my group, their biggest concern and challenge with moving to virtual is the engagement aspect, the networking that happens kind of organically at a live event. So that is definitely something that they are hoping to be able to offer in a virtual setting, as well as, you know, same first attendee to attendee, as well as attendee to exhibitor, and just kind of the challenge of missing the fun. Someone used as a quote, because the in-person event is fun. The idea of a gala or a fun run, or just being on site. So how do we replicate that in a virtual setting, were the challenges that my group faced.
And then did you have successful strategies?
Well, we're still working on it. Most of our events are scheduled for either later this year or in 2021. So we were still in a bit of the early phase, but we did discuss ways of incorporating things like gamification, earning points to attend certain sessions or engage in exhibiting. And we talked a little bit about fundraising. Instead of doing, kind of the large group fundraiser, engaging people in smaller group events. So smaller group dinners at somebody's home versus one large gala, or instead of a regular 5K, kind of kicking that up a notch and taking elite runners and pairing them with patients and having teams behind that. So just ways to engage smaller groups on a smaller level, but still with a big impact.
Great. Thank you. Julie, how is your group challenges and strategies?
Okay, I can unmute myself too. That was the first challenge and strategy. We talked about how do you present research? How do poster sessions work? We talked about networking as well. And we really talked about how do you address content when you have multiple audiences or lots of things that you want to present on. We touched briefly, and I think it would be great to share notes about that groups can all benefit about How do you think about registration and fundraising, especially in difficult times? But we didn't quite get to that in our addressing that piece. So perhaps that's another conversation that we can follow up on too. I know we've done parts of that, but through events, perhaps that's another conversation to have. And we talked as far as tips and strategies to think about content perhaps not being just in the 2-day block or however long the conference might be, but to break it up and present things at different times. Thinking about how much you're able to present in those days, but what you can do before and after. One strategy was to do weekly webinars to address content that you weren't able to have all on site at one time. We talked about thinking of keeping accessibility in mind and having different strategies depending on your community. There was lots of good ideas as far as, or lots of conversation about having a closed captioner. So how do you do that, or present things in written form too? What are the ways that you can solve for those challenges as well? And then we were talking also about the types of platforms. I think that the group would really like a list of platforms, or what are some platforms that we know organizations have used, perhaps organizations that have already had their conferences could share what platforms they use. And they'd like to see a platform RFP that was used by NORD or another organization, or even just a mock-up of what kinds of questions you ask to get the information you need to get quotes from companies. And my child is talking and I apologize.
Problem. All right, that's great. So we'll pass it to Allie.
So some of our challenges that we discussed was, what does a budget look like when you go from an in-person to a virtual event? Is there really more flexibility with your budget when going to a virtual event, since you don't have a lot of maybe the in-person costs? And also, I think similar to what Julie said, which platforms are legitimate? Which ones have our members used? It seems like our members are experiencing a delays to their RFPs or their requests for a demo. And so how are we overcoming those delays? And then finally, another challenge was just the kind of managing the technical back end of virtual platform. Like, how do you get that hands-on support, the protect support, and to ensure the meeting flows smoothly? So, in terms of tips and best practices learned, I think, we discussed it, as we've looked into some new platforms, they don't always have all the capabilities that we're looking for, especially this kind of nice breakout session format where you can raise your hands. But the more expensive platforms do seem to have more technical support. And we discussed, having a test run with your speakers and your moderators before hosting any type of virtual event to, get your community more familiar with using that virtual platform. And yeah, we also did a lot of discussion about actual platforms themselves, but I think, we'd like to learn more about what platform can you use for a virtual auction? What platform can you use for a virtual 5K? What are some platforms that our members have used that have worked well? So I will stop there.
Thanks, Allie. I'll pass it to Jamie. Jamie, you literally have 2 minutes.
Don't worry. We had such a great group. I only need 2 minutes. They really moved into what really worked best for them once it became going from in-person to virtual events. Challenges that have arisen are making it engaging, timing of how long should the events be, building momentum, and also thinking about the minutia of the events, of leaving breaks in between, bio breaks or just to get something to drink. And in-person networking, which seems to be a theme for everybody. The positives are, calling it something other than a support group. It's a virtual meetup, making it more engaging, and making it a social outlet, and then gearing it towards, making something the first Tuesday of every month, a webinar, monthly webinars, and about stress management or a speaker, and just continuously keeping people engaged.
Thank you. So that said, we're at the hour, but want to thank you all for joining us. This was an experiment of the roundtables that technologically didn't work exactly the way we liked, but we hope that you learned from each other, that you had the opportunity to share. If you have feedback, you can email. If it's positive feedback, you can email Debbie Drell, and if it's negative, you can email Ellie Crafton. Thank you so much for joining, and giving a clap to you all. Our Rapid Response COVID-19 webinar series is going to end on July 8th, and Joan Gary is the Dear Abby, or the Savage Love, or the nonprofit whisperer of the nonprofit world. She is really spectacular. She's going to talk about what to do when your board isn't doing anything, or when there are particular members of your board who are just maybe burned out from coronavirus, pandemic, and all the challenges. This will light a fire, and you should invite your board members to participate. It's our grand keynote. She speaks to thousands of people at in-person meetings, and has spoke to the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe it's not the Boys and Girls Club, but it's another, like, maybe it's the Girl Scouts, but to like 10,000 people last month. So she's speaking to our rare disease community, and that's on July 8th. So that's our next big webinar. Thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. Stay safe. Cover yourself if you can with something very fashionable, and have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.